Okay, let me hit record. Okay.
There we
Hi, everyone. You are watching Simply SCAdian, no title required. This is Zoph, and I am joined finally, by my fearless co-host, Lucas.
Yeah,
Yay, Lucas!
everybody, I take the time off so that Soph has something to complain about when I come back. Like that's really all I do. I'm like, you know, uh, otherwise the intro wouldn't be the same. Hey everybody, welcome to Simply Skitty, no title required. Once again, we are doing the good work as far as we're concerned about reaching out into the SCA and finding those people who, again, may not have achieved their peerage yet, may not even be actively seeking their peerage. They're just enjoying what they do in the SCA. Now, again, we always say we love our peers, we love our people who've achieved rank in the SCA, and those people have a lot to share with us. But you know what? Those people make up really kind of the majority of the SCA that are just making it every day in the society, have a lot to offer too. So we wanted to give them a forum, and we've been doing that for a couple of years. So we want to thank you guys for supporting us all during that time. So once again, the way you can really support us is by suggesting some guests. We want people from throughout the known world. All right. Right now, we really get East and Mid represented, but we want people from everywhere. Again, my challenge to all of you is I want an international guest. Okay, I want somebody who's going to stay up late or get up early and do this cast with us. So that's my challenge. I need that. And what you can do is hit us up on our Facebook page, recommend somebody, recommend yourself, and let us know what good work people are really doing in the SCA today. Person who's doing the good work. We'd like to welcome to the show Artemisia Voltera. And I'm going to try to paraphrase a rather impressive wiki page. This is so I'm using the phone today. I'm totally cheating. I really am. So Persona's a 14th century Italian, which I definitely want to talk about how we arrived there and talk about the uniqueness of that. The daughter of a wealthy alabaster mine owner. See, I like a good, like meaty backstory, so I want to know all about this. Um, Current offices in the barony of Red Spears, the Web Minister and Deputy Seneschal. So that's currently what Artemisia is doing. But man, if you checked out this list like I did, uh, she's done it all. I'm just gonna hit the highlights. Minister of Youth at Large, event steward for Yule feasts and various other things. I'm just kind of going down the list. ANS class coordinator, classes taught. Holy Lord, everybody, this is a list. So we're gonna hit this up. But I'm gonna hit you with a few of my favorites that we haven't heard on the show. Stamping, which I don't really think we've talked too much about. Origami. I love origami, so I want to talk about that. Games. I think that's a very cool one too. And a lecture type and miscellaneous. We have miscellaneous arts. I love this list: Viking treasure necklaces, making pomander, foam mosaics, Chinese New Year paper lanterns, root vegetable carving, and the story of Stingy Jack. Lots of awards, lots of things here. This is just a treasure trove of life in the SEA. And then the little blurb here at the end says, besides what you see there, a big point of her SEA life uh, uh, are the skills developed from being in it. Her children, specifically the oldest, learning skills from the SEA and putting it on applications for college and scholarships, as well as herself, with half of my last job interview focusing on the skills utilized in the SCA. So that's just wonderful that taking those things that we learned in the SCA and transferring them into the real world. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I am good.
Well, we always start with the same question, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of what I kind of teased there as we go. But how did you find the SCA?
So I went to college at BGSU, and that's Bowling Green State University. It's in Ohio. And when I was a freshman, there was another person who worked at the same place I did who was in the SCA, and she had older sisters that were in the SCA locally. And so I heard about it there, and like she kept trying to talk us and a bunch of us into like going to events or going to meetings. And this is when they were on campus doing meetings. And I never did anything there. They used to do practice outside too. So I would walk back from class one night and I would see them fighting just outside in the grass. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. But I never did anything. So that was back in 97 that I first knew about it. It wasn't until years later, my first job outside of after I graduated was still at the university. And my employee, the person who I had as like my secretary person, she was the seneschal for the local group. And there was Baron Wars. That was, oh no, before, yeah, that was the time. There was Baron Wars happening. And she said, oh, you should go. And so I had gone with like 3 other friends. We ended up going out to the event. So Baron Wars was very big back then. I mean, tons of people went to it. I mean, I don't know if they got like 500 to 1,000 people. There was a ton of people that used to go back then. So very large event at Fort Meigs. And we went there, but unfortunately, it was one of the years that it rained a lot. And so it was raining. There wasn't like anything to do. And we didn't get there till later anyway. So we walked around merchants and we're like, we don't see anything to do. So we left. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I mean, things looked cool, but it didn't really grab me in. So years later, I moved down to Findlay, Ohio. So that's south of Bowling Green and south of Toledo. And I was a stay-at-home mom and I was bored. And so I was like, hey, there was this SCA thing. I wonder if it's around here too. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, there was a local meeting. And so I went to that, and that was almost 18 years ago.
Wow.
Mhm.
So
So what was your first? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Zoe.
No, go ahead.
What was your first like interest then? Like a lot of people come to the table and they either like, well they did a lot of reading when they were in high school and college, and they like medieval lit, or they were fighters, or they're whatnot. What was kind of like your gateway thing? Like what did you like about the whole,
I
medieval
mean,
thing
the
first?
very first thing was it got me out of the house. Because I was a stay-at-home mom and I was bored, and I'm like, I'm not used to this. I'm used to going to a job. Like, yes, taking care of a kid is definitely a job, but it's totally different. And I didn't have anyone around, so I needed some sort of interaction. So being out with people was the very first thing, but I majored in art and art history in college. So naturally it all the art stuff, as you saw from my wiki page, I kind of delve a little bit into everything.
So you seem to be one of those multi-talented people who gives just as much service as you do teaching and the arts. What is it about service that attracts you?
So most of the time, half the service things I get into, because it was my very first event after actually joining, I think was there was a local event called Pounce, and I helped out because they needed help. And so most of the times the service event is someone's going, hey, I need help with this. And I'm like, sure, I'll help with that. Or I saw a need. So like when my kids were younger, especially, I was the kingdom minister of youth at one point too. And it naturally fell into because my kids, I wanted them to be more involved with the SCA, and I wanted them to develop more within it, and to actually like find their own space instead of just coming along with me. And so I'm like, okay, well, what better way than to help other kids along in the process too. So it's more of if I see a need or if somebody asks, then I tend to do that. And obviously sometimes that gets a little crazy because you have to be careful what you're saying yes to, but
Yeah. So what is it about being minister of youth? Because I was minister of youth for the Mid-Realm too. So what is it about that position that called to you?
um I already was doing a lot. So a lot of the classes that you see on my wiki page that I've taught, um, almost half of those have been for youth. Because again, it goes back to I wanted my kids involved, and there weren't people in the area really that were doing youth things. And so I said, okay, well, then I'm going to do youth things because I want my kids involved. And one thing we found in our local group was our group was down very small, and we needed a way to kind of attract people to come out. And I'm like, if we can get families out instead of just individual people, instead of like a person coming because the other person's staying at home with the kids, what if we get everyone to come, and then the mom or dad can go in the other room and fight, and then the kids can come in here with the other parent and they can do kid stuff. And so it attracted the whole family. And I mean, we got the group to grow so much by attracting families and including the youth in with it.
And what group was
That-
that?
That was up at Rothgard's Fjord, so up here in Toledo, Ohio.
Gotcha. Okay, go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just gonna say, a common theme on the show. We have a lot of common themes, when people bring things up. But like, again, we talk recruitment all the time, and we're always talking about how to get young people involved. Like little kids love the kind of weirdness of it all, and then we got stuff for the older, the kids that are aging into fighting and stuff like that. But that middle of the road area is such an underserved thing, or at least we found that it is, talking to people on the show. That seems like you had a lot of success with that, because one of the things we talk about with recruitment is, how do you bring people through the door? And this is the first time we've really heard somebody say, aim for the families. People talk about going to colleges and going to this, that, and the other thing, but aiming for that as a family event is really an astute thing. So if you're out there in TV land, and in your barony, there you go, everybody. That start doing that.
Well, and I mean, the tween years gets difficult because even if the kids are involved, you might lose them, just because it's harder to keep and capture that and keep them there. But if you are able, now when mine were mostly tweens, COVID hit. So it was a weird thing. And then after COVID, they're like, I want something to do. And so they were fine with coming with me. And but I mean, I think then it gets into the category of, how do we keep them on as teenagers and keep them involved, because then it's like switching over to a role where you have to almost see them as an adult, because these are kids that have grown up in the SCA, and half the time when you look around the room, they've been there longer than half the people that are coming in the door. And so they are already well aware of half the things that new people have no clue over. And so I mean, my oldest kid, actually at 16, they are the barony's Kingdom Minister of Youth, or not youth, sorry, Kingdom Minister of Arts and Science. So,
Wow.
mhm.
So were you the one that started, like, like again, I listed just a few of the things. Were most of those classes planned, like, for your barony, like as youth events? That's how that all, the genesis of that, or
Majority of those were planned as youth classes. So I used to, every single week, which it got to be a lot, but every single week I would plan out a new class for the youth in our that were coming to the canton that I was at, so Rothgard's Fjord. And so I would try to make it a little variety too. And it ended up that a lot of the new people that were coming in, they would see the class and they're like, oh, that's really neat. And so like sometimes we'd have people, adults sitting on the classes too, because I mean, we just held them in the general area where all the tables were. It wasn't like it was restricted and off in a different area. They were around everyone else. And so, the adults could interact and everything too.
So have you thought about taking the classes that you've prepped for kids and take them? Wow, that was a really huge boom of thunder. I don't know if y'all heard that, but wow.
but we saw the lightning about 3 seconds before that hit, by the way,
Oh, did
behind you.
you? Okay.
Oh yeah.
So have you thought about branching into expanding it now? As these kids are older, would they like to either help you teach the class to more youth or expand it to adults?
I mean, so my oldest one already teaches. Well, actually, both of my older two kids teach classes and have for a while now. The oldest one, I know they taught the last Penzic. I don't remember if they taught the Penzic before that too, but they've been teaching a variety of classes in their own right. and different stuff than I ever even taught. They did start out with, I had taught paper making at one point, and so they enjoyed the paper making, and so they kind of took that on as their thing. And they taught paper making at a variety of different places and everything. And then my middle kid likes to do gaming, so they tend to teach gaming classes.
How do you make paper? How do you make paper in the SCA?
It's more like, so I didn't really get into like the really like making paper like out of like fibers and stuff, like the plant fibers. It was more of the like recycled type of stuff, and so you're still going about the same movements, like you're just ripping up the current paper that you no longer want, and then blending it with water, and then putting it in a frame. And but
I'm fascinated. I've never made paper or seen a class on making paper, so I just got notified that there's tornado warnings happening where I live. So if I run away, we'll let Lucas lead the show, and I'll be in the basement with the cat.
Or don't let that happen.
What exciting time right here in Northeast Ohio. All right, anyway. So how does a person make paper?
See, you're putting me on the spot. I
Sorry.
haven't done the paper class in a long time, a super long time.
All right, well, we'll have somebody else on the show who can tell us how to make paper.
Yeah, that's
I don't
probably
wanna
good.
make you uncomfortable.
So a lot of these classes, like I tried to just do the very basics. Like I didn't go super, super big. Like I would do some research, like some basic stuff, but I wouldn't go super into it, because the whole point is that I wanted people to kind of try a little bit of stuff. And if they liked it, I wanted to then, you know, encourage them. Okay, so here's what you know already from the little bit that I taught you. Now go out and learn more yourself so that you can dive into it and they could make it their thing. So, I mean, all my classes were the most basic ones, just to get, so people could get a feel of stuff.
Right.
Then my question would be then what's your deep dive? Like you know what I mean? Like you do a lot of different things and whatnot. Is there something that you do for you? Like maybe you've taught a class on it, but it's like this is your your passion in the like within the SCA.
I changed so much. So, I mean, even it's funny because even in college, like I couldn't pick one art form that I liked the most. So I just did a general art degree along with the art history degree, because I just kind of liked all of them. And so, I mean, it still holds true for the SCA. Like I just kind of dabble in everything, and like then I'll get bored with it for a little bit, so I'll switch over to something else. Like the Japanese ink painting, that one is one that I kind of kept going back to, and I every once in a while will keep going back to. But and then I really like carving as well, wood carving.
So how did you arrive at your persona?
So my favorite painter when I was in college was Artemisia Voltera. And I just loved her style of painting. And so I was like, well, that's my favorite painter, so I'm taking her first name. and then I was like, well, I want to be somewhere, you know, right before the Renaissance, that was close enough to Florence but wasn't in Florence. And so I looked on the map and did the research, and Volterra is a town that's close enough to it. And so I was like, well, that's good. And then I did the research, and I'm like, oh, they're known for their alabaster mines. And so that's how I kind of came up with the whole backstory as well.
What the heck is an alabaster mine? Like, I didn't even know that alabaster was mined. Like, this is news to me.
Apparently it's alabaster mines are huge over there. And so alabaster's like, it's not glass, it's like almost see-through. They used to use it for like window panes and stuff like that way back when, but
so that's how they made money in the town of Volterra. There would have been a family that made their riches owning a mine. I'm telling you, I'm learning things tonight. Okay, so now we're going to go back to, what is Japanese ink painting?
So Japanese ink painting is, I started on that because I was doing the paper making back then. And so I was doing paper making, and I'm like, ooh, how thin could I make it? And there was somebody who had a Japanese persona, like years and years ago, before there were a lot of people that had Japanese personas. And she was teaching a class on, I don't even remember what she was teaching. It was something to do, something Japanese wise. And she's like, hey, I want to give away something to these people when they take my class as a gift to them of thank you for taking my class. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, what about Japanese ink painting? And, because I'd kind of been like looking into stuff. I don't remember how I fell upon it. And she's like, "Oh, that'd be awesome. Can you make me up however many?" And I was like, "Sure." So I researched a whole bunch of stuff and taught myself how to do it and made paper as thin as I could make it so that I could do Japanese ink painting on it. So
So
it's
what
like
is that process? What is that process then? Like
so
what makes it unique to that, that thing?
well, the one that I was doing was monochromatic, and so it's only with the colors. So similar to the stuff that the ink that we use for calligraphy. So, and I mean, they do calligraphy with it too in Japanese, but it's doing a painting with a bigger brush and lots of mountains and Japanese style trees, and
Is that something you still do?
not very often. I haven't done that for a long time. Every once in a while, I'm like, ooh, and I'll find my stuff because my house is kind of like a art store that has way too many art things of all variety all over the place. So like I'll come across the stuff and I'm like, oh, I haven't done that for a while. And so I'll get that out and I'll do that for a little bit. And then I find something else and I do that, do that over and over again.
Um, I wanted to ask about the henna class that you taught. Did the parents let you actually put henna on their kids?
I think the henna class was for everyone in general. So after we stopped doing the classes just for the kids, we kind of turned in our classes into it's for everyone that shows up. So we tried to have classes that were not that didn't restrict ages. And so I mean, and most of the people that came that were the parents, they were getting henna too, and it was kind of up to the parents if they did it. But
Nice. So
the
what,
kids loved it.
so are you still interested in doing stuff for the youth of the kingdom or the known world, or is that, I mean, because I found personally as my kids got older, Ben hates the SCA. He's 18 now. He has no interest in the SCA at all. So I don't do a lot of stuff with kids anymore. I don't know, does Romeo and Juliet count as doing stuff with kids? Because they were teenagers in the play.
Yeah.
So that
Yes.
kind of, okay, so that counts. But
He
I
was
don't,
my kid, so yes.
oh, it was your kid, so that's all that matters. So, and what an amazing Romeo he was.
Oh, sure.
No, he was. But anyway, like I find that my interest in doing children's stuff seems to have waned. Is that the same thing for you now that your kids have grown out of that age where they need a responsible adult?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely holds true. I mean, I tend to focus more on how I can get them now more active and more involved. And so, like with my oldest one, um, over the past year, they wanted to start bringing their friends. And so it was, getting permission slips for their friends to go and get their parents to sign off so we could bring their friends with them so that they can, show the SCA off to their friends, which honestly, that was amazing because half of their friends now they're getting ready to all, go off to college next year. And they're like, so I picked this school and this school, and do they have SCA near it? And so, they still want to be involved, which is amazing and wonderful. But it just kind of goes back to the how can you get a kid of any age involved and how to keep them active within the SCA. And yeah, I definitely grew as they grew, where doing the younger classes doesn't interest me as much anymore. And I tend to focus on more of the stuff that I can guide them into.
Right, what you can do with your teens. Because mine now, Rowan is, oh my God, they're going to be 25 in 2 months, in 2 weeks, excuse me, on the 24th, they're going to be 25 years old. But they're finding their own way in the SCA now, and they've become this amazing, incredible person, right? But I found out I was pregnant with Rowan at Penzig. Like, you know what I mean? So they have literally grown up in the SCA, and it's fascinating to see who they are now in the SCA. Is it the same for you as you watch your kids age?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as a parent, there's nothing better than getting to see your kid enjoy the SCA and find the things that they like and get involved and get excited about it as you are. I mean, there's nothing better than that.
And Angelica says having an art store in your home is very SCAdian. She also says, Artemisia, good going with fostering the next generation, and kudos to your kids. That's awesome.
So before we get off the kid stuff, because I think this is probably still related to that, I'm going to ask two things: root vegetable carving and the story of Stingy Jack. I feel like both of those things need to be addressed.
Those were done the same night.
They were
So,
done. No, okay,
and that was for adults. That wasn't for kids, actually.
all
That
right.
was so sometimes we were trying to find a class where I was trying to fill a schedule, and it was around October, and so why not gear it towards kind of like what October, is known for nowadays, which is carving. Well, back then they didn't carve pumpkins, but they did carve root vegetables. And then the story of Stingy Jack went along with some of the different stuff from back then of
Was it again? I'm a mythology teacher, and so I debunk holidays for my classes, like all the things you think are mythological aren't or whatnot. And Stingy Jack, where he went to hell and he was so bad the devil kicked him out, but gave him an ember, and so he carved out a turnip, put the ember in there, and carried it, and that's how it got to be Jack's O' Lantern, Jack O' Lantern.
that's
That's what
exactly
I
yes.
thought. So, all right, see, I knew a thing. Finally, I knew a thing. You know.
Woo! I'd never heard this story. So this is an
Yeah,
actual.
we didn't get pumpkins aren't associated with Halloween until till the New World and almost like the mid 1800s.
So what
For
would
that,
you carve? I mean, what would be big enough to carve to put?
They would
root
carve
vegetables,
turnips. Yeah, root
turnips,
vegetables. So like for the class, I went out and I got beets, I got root vegetable, I got turnips, I don't even remember. They would carve like parsnips. So it would be small things, it wouldn't be huge things. But it was so cool because people were carving all sorts of things in them to make them look like jack-o'-lanterns. But
yeah.
it was
Wow, so
really
they
But
would
you're
hollow
holding it
out.
like a lantern. It's like the size of a softball. You know.
So wait, so you would hollow out the root vegetable, and
Yep. Just
then
like you do
that's
a
a
pumpkin.
pain. That's not easy.
no,
It
it
takes
wasn't
work.
easy.
So here's an interesting story. This year at Penzic, I have nothing to do with it, but at Penzic they do youth theater and youth commedia. And the youth theater troupe I don't even know the play, but one of the boys in the play got to be a fish. So him and his mom went and got a potato and he carved a fish into the potato and made a block print on his tunic of the fish. And he gifted the potato to the instructor afterwards to thank them for letting him be a fish in the play. So I guess what my point with that story is that these sort of things are special to all kids in the SCA. This learning how to carve, and how do you get kids to safely carve in the SCA? Like I almost cut my thumb off whittling when I was a little kid.
Well, you mean for the stamping one or
Yeah, either.
for the root vegetable one, most of the kids are now teenagers, so they're not so little anymore. And most of the kids now that come are my own kids who they've been around carving stuff for a while now, so they're not really new to knives. But like for the stamping, I think we tried to do it with like foam. We carved foam instead of carving something hard, so it was nice and soft, so you can cut through foam with almost anything. So it was a little bit safer that way. Or like I think I also got I got stickers, and we stacked the stickers so that it was the same sticker over and over again, and they just stack together and stuck them together, and we use that instead.
Huh. All right, go ahead, Lucas.
Oh, okay, so I kind of want to shift gears a little bit here, and talk about, you have a lot of awards. You are very well awarded, and I wanted to ask a question, because like I don't know other kingdoms terminology, so I just, if you could clarify a couple of these, just talk about a little bit about what they're for, how you got them. So the Order of the Dragon's Heart. Let's start with with I guess, I don't know if that's the latest of the Kingdom Awards. It looks, yeah, chronologically
I think
probably
it
the,
is,
the thing
yeah.
the thing you just got. So what is that? What is that for? Explain that.
So I got that one. So I got that one I was either the end part of the Kingdom Minister of Youth. And right before I was Kingdom Minister of Youth, I was Page School Dean. And so I had spent a lot of time dealing with classes and education and assisting with kids. So that is, oh, I'm so bad with terminology and stuff. That is for service.
It's the GOA, Grant of Arms award level for service. In the mid realm, you get a purple fret, which is your AOA equivalent for service. Then the Dragon's Heart is the GOA, and then the Pelican comes after that. I wanted to ask more about the Page School, because we haven't, that was such a pain when I was Kingdom MOY, because it was just so dying and not dying. So tell us about the Page School the way it is now.
I mean, I'm not involved with it now, so I have no clue how it is now. So, but when I took over it, we only had, maybe 3 to 5 kids that were participating regularly. And so obviously I knew something had to change, because I'm like, well, it's silly for me to have this position for only like 3 to 5 kids. So I revamped the book when I was in office, rewrote the entire thing, trying to gear it a little more to try to get kids more active. And then I went around all around the kingdom to do classes so that parents could be aware that we have this, so that they could sign their kids up for it. And I think by the end, I was close to like 50 kids that we had signed up.
Oh, so can you explain exactly what the Page School is in the mid realm?
So the Page School, how the Mid Realm has it is that there's like different levels, and there's, I mean, it's like they have to, it was, I separated it into 3 different categories. So you had your service, and you had your arts, and then you had your, it's not necessarily fighting, because it could have been like archery and stuff too. So it was like those things. So like the more physical things.
Martial arts. Yeah.
Right, martial arts. So it was those 3 categories, and they had different levels and different things that they had to do in different categories. And then obviously, as if they got done with the level, then they got a certificate of completion of that level, and then they could move on to the next level and do all the things there. Again, a certificate of completion, and then they could move on, and so forth. And I started belts with them, because I was like, I tried to look at what they saw adults doing and tried to kind of replicate it for them, because again, I wanted it to be their SCA, and so that they would be seeing, oh, my mom or dad took this belt from this person and they're wearing it, and it signifies who they are, and so I had purple belts that I had done up so that people could recognize that these youth are trying to achieve certain things and get to certain levels and learn about more in the SCA. And we had like tokens that went along with them. I made coins up for them as well, and all sorts of things.
You've made coins too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I passed the dies on when I made dies and I made coins, so they could get coins for each of their things that they did, and then they could attach them onto the belt. I think I had punched holes into them as well, so they could sew them onto a belt, so it would look like a plaque belt then.
Wow, that's so cool. That is so impressive. Wow.
Yeah, wow. Make me feel like I'm standing still. Jesus. Uh, so I mean, so that I mean, I mean, again, it's hard to be involved with something like that, make so many changes like that. You say you're not really involved now. I mean, do you keep an eye on it? I mean, do you look back every now and again to see if they kind of continued your hard work? I would think, that would be part of it, but
I mean, so after that is when I took on Kingdom Minister of Youth, and then COVID happened in there too at the end of that. So yeah, and COVID was just crazy. That was beyond crazy.
another theme. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
But I credit pandemic with getting me into the SCA. So, you know, it was actually a good thing in my opinion. Weird. Um, but yeah. So so you've got a lot of all right. I don't want to forget to ask this, and I feel like if I know we're jumping around a little bit. We're talking about how you have all these, just eclectic skills and whatnot. How did it help you in the job interview?
Yeah. So in the job interview, it's for a university and it's for their secretary for their counseling center. So their counseling center does a ton of outreach stuff. So they're putting on different events. And so they asked a lot about, oh, have you ever put on an event? I'm like, well, I'm in the SCA. And then I had to describe that. And I had to describe what went along with that and the different positions I held. And they're like, oh, are you serious? You've done all of this? That's exactly what we're looking for, because those skill sets aren't something that somebody naturally would come to unless they're in something like the SCA, which, and if you're like into service and like helping out at events or being an autocrat for events or whatever it may be, the ability to plan, to organize, to put things together, to get different people in place and to know how to like check in on them to make sure that they're staying on track and all that fun stuff. But
Hmm.
this is Sula, by the way, everybody. This is Sula. Okay, enough. I have found the same thing. I'm getting more into project management in my career, and having run multitude of events and theater troupes means that I can run projects at work. Those are easy.
well, and then even my oldest one then used it for college applications because they're like, I haven't had a job. I'm like, you've been in the SCA. I'm like, you've taught multiple classes. You've run ANS stuff. You've run, been in charge of different things to do with the ANS aspect. And I'm like, absolutely, you've done stuff that you can
Right.
put down on a either resume in the future or on a scholarship application.
So your oldest is in a senior right now in high school?
Mhm.
Same. Same.
Same,
Yeah, the
same.
three of us all have kids in high school, seniors in high school. What a huge, scary thing. So my question for you is about, I know that one of your children is autistic.
Mhm.
Um, my son is autistic. Um, how has that made the SCA, playing the SCA for them? How is that with somebody with autism?
I mean, it's such a different time than it is for my older two. So, I mean, not only is she autistic, but I'm autistic as well. We found out literally a week apart from each other.
Wow.
And it was during the pandemic. So it was a crazy time. But I mean, the SCA, it's totally different. I'm kind of waiting for her to find her niche and what she really likes in it. And she's still younger. She's 10, so she's younger, but she loves going. And I mean, some of the struggles that I didn't realize it was because I was autistic that I struggled with. Um, it makes it easier to bring her along with the SCA, like clothing. Clothing is a big one. So clothing, especially for someone who's autistic, typically it is very, if it's too tight, if it's too scratchy, if it's too, it has to be very specific. It has to be comfortable to them for whatever they deem is comfortable. And a lot of SCA clothing that like I see people wearing, I'm like, oh, it's so pretty. And then I'll try it out and I'm like, oh, I cannot do that. That is awful. Like it is beautiful, but it's not something I want to wear every day just because it's too tight and it's too whatever. It's just not right. And so, I mean, the benefit that she has is that with me being autistic as well, I already know some of the things. So, like, we try on clothing, and I'm like, okay, so this is nice and comfy clothing. And I mean, so you just kind of have to gear it a little bit differently.
Yeah, my son is like that. Like with pants, I bought some pants for him and they were rejected immediately because they just felt wrong.
Yep.
So, he of course I have some linen that I wear in the modern world and he calls them my SCA clothes. And I'm like, no, these are modern linen pants from Old Navy, but they're my SCA clothes because he wore linen primarily because it was the only thing that he was comfortable in was it had to be ironed. It always had to be ironed linen. It couldn't be just washed and line dried. It had to be ironed to soften it up. So I
Hmm.
get it. I get it.
I mean, she's still young, so it's different, and it's a little bit more difficult now. Like if she were my only kid, it would be a total different thing than it is now because I have other kids as well. And so sometimes I have to like coordinate with her dad to be like, hey, she really wants to go to this event, but so do my other kids. And so it's kind of like coordinating with him, like, can you go and like be her person for the event so that, if it's too much, either they could leave or they could, walk away and do something else. Whereas I can focus on the bigger two kids and having them be happy and all that fun stuff.
Right, right. It's hard to be a parent in the SCA. And I think that we don't appreciate that enough because so many people joined the SCA in their youth before they had kids. And, a lot of people in the SCA seem to be two-parent households. So they don't get what it's like because I was a single parent with Rowan, especially I married her stepfather, but he wasn't into the SCA at all. So I was a single SCA parent, and it's almost impossible to be a single SCA parent and bring your kids to events. There are events that I would show up and I'd leave an hour and a half later. So how do we make the SCA more open and accessible for parents?
I mean, when I was really trying to get the families, it was super easy then for parents, regardless if they were single parents or two parents, to come and join the SCA or to come to meetings because they had all these other families around. And then, like, it was just like a community. It was just a community that had kids too. It wasn't a big deal. And I mean, it definitely, I don't know what the solution is because it is extremely difficult. Um, Trying to coordinate three kids going to an event with all the different clothes and all the different stuff. And then if they're a different age group, one wants to do one thing, one wants to do another thing. Some of it is, as they got older, I was able to kind of like, oh, you're going to go do that? And my kid wants to do that. And they're like, well, I'll just take your kid. And I'm like, yes, please. So, I mean, sometimes it's, relying on friends to help you out to take care of one kid so that you can focus more on another one.
Right. Now,
Yeah,
did you
that almost sounds like on the kingdom level, it's sort of a hidden office. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you proposed that, like when you just asked that question, I said, is there a ministry of family planning or so? You know what I mean? Like something that specifically goes out of it. If you go out of your way to have youth services and you go out of your way to have all these other things, I feel like that's actually like a deficit somewhere we don't seem to, you know, to plan for like family group,
Well,
you
when I
know.
would run youth activities in my local group, the Barony of Brendoken, which is south of Cleveland, Ohio, I would be in a room, me and one other person would be in a room basically all day, playing games with the kids, entertaining the kids. And then I started instituting a rule that every parent had to give an hour. every parent had to volunteer an hour in the room with me, but we would literally be in a room far away from everything else. And the parents could go fight and fence and take classes while their kids were entertained by me and my aide. And then as I started doing it more, I started changing it up more again, asking parents to give an hour, and then we would make favors for the fighters. So before the fighting would start, attorney would start, we would go and each of the kids would pick a fighter and give them their favor. And then we would watch some of the fighting as much as we could, or they would go back to their parents to watch the fighting. You know what I mean? So it's constantly evolving, because both parents usually want to do stuff, and I'm sorry, but not a lot of the time in the SCA, and this is not always true. I need to say that before I go on. Some parents are really great in the SCA, and they're like Artemisia, and they're willing to do whatever it takes so their kids can explore and grow. But some parents are really crappy and want to just dump their children on someone else and have their children watch so they can go shop and fight and fence and do archery and whatever. So it was always a question of weeding out those parents so that the good parents, their kids could have a good time too.
I think you hit upon something as far as making it grow in other places, is that the perception of what its function is feels like it has to change. Because when you described it at first, before you started saying, like we require an hour and all that kind of stuff, it sounded like daycare to me.
It
Do you know
was.
what I mean? And
It
I
was.
can tell you honestly, as a parent and whatnot, and I would volunteer my time, but I wouldn't spend all day there because I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like that just I can't think of anything more wretched than the daycare kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
like a day of that. Like just you know what I mean? Like it sounds awful. I'm
It
sorry.
was. It was,
so
but
at
we
one
Poor.
point, one of the things I was doing, because sometimes people would ask me to be in charge of youth classes, and I'm like, oh, because I didn't want it to turn into that. So I would try to have set start and end times for each different class so that they could come and go. And then I was doing make and take classes. So like if we couldn't have like a youth area, I would try to make up like make and take bags that would have all the stuff that they would need in a Ziploc bag that would close so that the stuff wouldn't get all over a vehicle later or all in the parent stuff. But it would have the instructions of what to do. It would have all the stuff nicely, neatly packed, and they could just come and pick it up. And that way, if mom and dad are fighting or whatever, and they're sitting at, their day camp, they could get the stuff out and they could do it right there. So they're still interacting, they're still learning and doing something with the SCA, but they're still there with mom and dad as well.
Right. And sometimes you have feral mobs of children. Like, I'm not going to lie, sometimes you would get these tweens who would like just glom onto each other, like 8 or 9 of them. And they would just sort of be this feral little pack of tweens that would be going all over the event. And 9 times out of 10, they were the coolest, funnest kids ever, ever.
So before the show started, my youngest said hi. He's going to be 12 in a couple weeks, but he is one of these feral children at SCA events. He goes what we call the Lord of the Flies preschool, and they go and they're they're almost naked by the end. We did start with clothes. We don't understand that. Um, they're learning, they're sharpening sticks. I don't know what they're doing, but bits for no reason, places and whatnot. So yeah, I feel feral group. I definitely,
But we need more things for those feral tweens to do. And I think we started out talking about that, Artemisia, right?
yeah.
That we need things for these tweens. What's gonna interest them in the SCA? And I think that's something we should all think about and maybe discuss further.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One of
Well,
the
one of
things
our,
oh, sorry.
No,
One
go
of
I
the
ahead.
was
things
just say, yeah,
tried to have too was scavenger hunts that focused on the event to get them to go to different locations in the event so that they could be more interactive with it and try it out and see if they liked it.
that's our major event here in the barony of Setmore Swamp. Our I think like our premier event, because Mud Thaw is us hosting a kingdom event, so it's not really ours necessarily. Whereas Quest, which we do, is a big Saturday. It's a weekend long event for us. We camp and everything. And Saturday is all the typical. There's we crown we have our champions fights and whatnot. But that Sunday is this like huge like quest that the whole weekend is themed around. And then you can get groups of three, and it's like a 2 hour it's like half scavenger hunt, half double dare. Like if you remember that old show, like you know what I mean. But it's all themed. Like last year, we had a great one with all based on Don Quixote. It's been based in Greek myth, and it's been great pirates, and all sorts of things. And it is like a very youth oriented event. Adults can also compete in it, but they're not competing against each other. You know what I mean? It's whoever completes all the tasks first in all these different age categories. So we kind of do that, but not on like a just a regular, at Mudsaw there's nothing. It's a fighting event for the
Right.
most part. Not to I love Mud though.
That was great. All right. So Artemisia, would you be MOY again? Would you be Minister of Youth again for the kingdom? Would that be something that would interest you based on our conversation tonight where we came up with all these awesome ideas?
I mean, no, probably not. I mean,
I
only
appreciate the
because
honesty.
Yes.
as I've gotten older, I mean, no, probably not. Only because my kids aren't that age group anymore, really. So I I think I would be dividing myself too much,
Right.
and then I would get burnt out, and that's just not good.
Yeah. I really admire that you can say that really, because I'm sort of thinking I could go for MOY again. I could do that again now, but I won't because I'm on Pensick staff and that's enough for anybody.
my my thing as a newbie would be so we sit around at something like this and we have all these great ideas and you had just to me wonderfully successful ideas in your tenure in these various things. Well, I'd be more interested to ask the question, how do we share that information with the known world? Because like again, if I didn't watch a show like this or if I didn't wasn't a part of it or whatnot, well, I mean, again, being here in Jersey, I would never know the good work that you were doing where you were when you did it. You know what I mean? Like, is there a again, this is another newbie question. Is there a something in place where we could share these ideas with other baronies, with other kingdoms and whatnot? Do we do anything like that? Like, I don't know. I hate to use the word like convention or summit, but you know what I
There's
mean? Like,
Facebook pages, there's Facebook groups for
yeah,
parents
that
and for ministers of youth.
Mhm. Yeah, I
yeah, I
used
mean,
to have all the contact info for all the different minister of youth. So, I mean, we used to all talk to each other back then.
right.
All right, guess what? We're almost out of time. We told you time flies.
Yeah,
It really does. All right, so Artemisia, last question. What can the SCA do better?
I think the biggest thing right now is I absolutely hate that they changed the non-member fee from $5 to $10. I think that is the most massive deterrent that we could ever do for someone new. Because I'm thinking, okay, so you have two adults that want to go to the SCA. The event's $15, but add $10 to each of them. So instead of it being $30, they're now up to what, $50?
Yeah.
And then it's like, is that really worth them checking out the SCA? I don't know. I just think that's the biggest deterrent right now. The biggest thing that the SCA could do better is that I mean, I remember when I started at one point in time, they had something, and I don't know the logistics behind it because I was very new at the time. They had something where like you could bring someone to an event twice. I don't know. It was something they experimented with way back when. But I don't know. I think upping that is
Shooting
not a
in
good
the
way to
foot.
get people to go to events that are not members.
Agreed. Yeah, you're right.
Has that been the general consensus from just people that you've kind of talked to and whatnot? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, same.
It's shooting ourselves in the foot. We're not going to get new
Mhm.
people. We're already struggling with getting new people and retaining new people. This is not going to change that at all. It's going to make it harder.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, we are out of time. Artemisia, it has been so wonderful. I haven't seen you in so long, so just seeing your face is making my heart happy. And you were an incredible guest. So thank you so much for being on the show with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Take us out,
Yeah, this
Lucas.
well, all right. I just some real talk because we're gonna take 3 weeks off this time, guys. For real reasons. So I'm getting my hip replaced. So I don't think we've ever really kind of talked about that on the show. But I'm
Oh,
having
'cause you haven't
surgery.
been here. When would we have talked about it?
I've been here. I've been here, everybody. You know I love you. You know I love being here. Don't listen. Just because my Laurel gives me crap. Don't, it's no title required, and yet. Anyway,
So Lucas is getting his hip replaced in 2 weeks. So keep him in your
yeah,
thoughts.
on a Thursday that we would normally have the show, and then the following week is Easter week.
No, that's during Holy Week. The
During Holy Week.
28th is Maundy Thursday.
Yeah.
For those
So okay,
who
so
follow the Christian calendar.
yeah, so we'll be back. We'll be back after the week after Easter and kind of hit that. So yeah, so apologize about that, but kind of necessary. Walking around Penzig was tragically painful last year, so hopefully that won't be the case anymore. So yeah, and then I don't know that we have a guest necessarily lined up for then, but again, that's on you guys. We need those guests, keep them rolling in. We need people that cover us through June because we go dark July and August, but you're our pipeline for that, everybody. So again, I challenge you yet again, international. So yeah, so Artemisia, so great to talk to you. Everybody, this has been Simply SCAdian, no title required. Thank you so much for joining us.